Most people nowadays spend a frankly unacceptable amount of hours in this position, which leads to all kinds of problems, from shoulder to back pain, from a lack of hip mobility to knee or ankle mobility. But what if there was a single exercise that could take care of most of these issues? Well, lucky for you, that was a rhetorical question. The back bridge is a somewhat unique exercise in that it doesn't just work on flexibility and strength, but it requires basically total body control. If you've ever tried going into a back bridge without the necessary flexibility, strength and control, you might have noticed that it is practically an impossible position to get into. However, all the benefits we can reap from this exercise make it very much worth your while. From the chest and shoulder flexibility, similar to the one we can build through dead hangs, to the strength benefits for our spine and our posterior chain we can get from deadlifts, to the anterior chain flexibility benefits, similar to the ones we can get from the couch stretch for our quads, our abdominals, our tibialis, our hip flexors, to the full body control and coordination benefits, similar to the ones we would normally get from more complex movement patterns that require full control of all four limbs and, most importantly, your spine. So let's check out how you can reap all the benefits from the back bridge and walk through it step by step. And now you're wondering, so where do I start? Well, I'm glad you asked. The reverse tabletop position is somewhat similar, yet a lot more accessible, and works on pretty much a lot of the same muscles, especially when it comes to both flexibility and strength, opening up our chest and shoulders, required for overhead mobility, experiencing a light stretch, especially if you are very tight in your hip flexors and your quads, and while most importantly strengthening our posterior chain, going through our calves, our biceps femoris, our glutes, and our spinal erectors, required to push up from here. And in case of this exercise, it can be very beneficial to work both on holding this position for 20 to 30 seconds statically before you release, and you can even fold forward a little bit to lengthen your posterior chain before you start flexing it again, as well as working through this exercise dynamically by pushing forward and upward, holding for just a second before we release, extend our legs all the way, and then repeat and working our way up to 10 to 12 repetitions. This way you can start building a solid foundation for what is to come. Number 2, asymmetrical arches. If you do have the necessary mobility to sit down all the way, lengthening your tibialis and helping you work more passively on this dorsiflexion, that will be absolutely amazing. If you cannot, starting in this position is also well enough, because all we need to do from here is right hand or right heel, pushing our hips forward, and now we're going to extend our left arm and pull back as far as we can while keeping the other arm extended, and then we're going to simply move forward and switch to the other direction. Now this is going to help us open up our anterior chain even more than the reverse tabletop, especially working through our abdominals now all the way up towards our delts and pectorals once more, while helping us once again strengthen our posterior chain. And by the way, this one feels absolutely amazing to go through, especially if you've been accumulating tightness over the course of the day because you've been sitting in this goblin posture for hours on end. This way we are once more combining anterior chain flexibility with posterior chain strength, while adding a lot of rotational movements to our spine for even more benefit. This video is sponsored by you liking this video, subscribing to this channel, watching the whole thing. Hell, maybe you will even leave a comment below. Is all the sponsorship I need. You are the only reason I make those videos. And while we are in the same starting position, we can use this exercise in a more static way to increase or maximize anterior chain flexibility, working your way to holding this fully extended in your spine for 20 to 30 seconds until you barely feel any more stretch, then working your way down onto your elbows. And now here is the very important part. We are always actively flexing our glutes and our posterior chain to lengthen our anterior chain, holding here until you can hold for 20 to 30 seconds very comfortably, and only then will you start moving down with your shoulders, laying down all the way, opening up your chest and shoulders as well. And once again, we're actively pushing up and holding until we are very comfortable in this position. And in between stretches, you can sit up and fold forward to release any tension you might have, especially in your lumbar spine, before you repeat this stretch statically once more. And now we can take it a step further into a single-sided, asymmetrical or unilateral bridge, working a lot on our shoulder strength combined with anterior chain flexibility and posterior chain strength, so you can start building the necessary foundation for a complete bridge. Extend your arm, hold for a handful of seconds, and then of course we're going to switch into the other direction. Arm behind, push up, and similar to our tabletop, now we're going to elevate even more, arch our back, and pull our other arm all the way towards the floor, working even more in our overhead mobility for our arms and shoulders. And you can even work your way up to holding this position for 20 to 30 seconds. Between the repetitions, you can simply fold forward in a very relaxed manner and release any sort of tension you might have in your spine. And since one of the best ways to advance in this quickly is having multiple variations of very similar movement patterns with tiny shifts in which parts they strengthen and stretch. And one of my favorite exercises that helps immensely when it comes to building bridge mobility is starting out in a deep Cossack squat with our hand behind our extended leg. Now, once again, arching all the way, strengthening our posterior, lengthening our anterior chain, and this exercise is amazing in giving you the space to turn more and more into this spinal rotation, and is very easily done in a dynamic fashion, all the way up, all the way down, hand behind the extended leg, once again arching in our back, elevating, flexing the posterior chain, and pushing as far into a rotation as we can before we reverse and move forward. With this movement pattern having an amazing second variation, once again starting in this deep Cossack with our hand behind our extended leg. Now we will carefully lower down our arm all the way, and now we're going to raise from here. Once again, up with our hips, flexing our posterior, lengthening our anterior, holding for a handful of seconds before we move forward, like so. And once again, our hand is behind the extended leg, carefully lowering down our lower arm, extending our other arm, and push up all the way, lengthen your anterior, and push your way into a full rotation in your spine. Pull your fingertips towards the floor, hold for a second or two, and reverse. All the way up, and repeat on the other side. And if you have access to a pull-up bar, I would highly recommend including classic passive or dead hangs, not just because of all the decompression we can get for our shoulders, but also all the decompression we can get for our entire spine, lengthening our pecs and our delts, decompressing our rotator cuff, so it can be all loose and limber in our spine and our shoulders. Not to mention that we're building a massive amount of grip strength, very useful if you're interested in advancing your calisthenics exercises as well. And then of course, one of our most crucial things to work on is our forearm flexibility. Very easy to remedy with our hands flat. We're going to turn our fingers backwards towards our knees, and now shifting forward is going to release any sort of stretch, and from here you're going to simply push back, hold for 20 to 30 seconds in a static stretch before you move forward again. And you can do some dynamic pulses. Open up and release. Open up and release. And over time, as your wrist mobility increases, you will be able to extend more and more. And of course, you can do this while you're sitting at home, stretching out like so. You don't really need to do an exercise. You can simply extend your arm and just hold a couple of times over the course of the day as a complementary stretch. And one more very short bonus: if you have access to a gym with a Bozo ball, or you have one at home, an absolutely amazing tool at helping us working on our back bridge by laying down and carefully extending our arms and shoulders and moving around, loosening up our spine, our chest, our shoulders, our forearms. And we can also just relax in this position, and this also makes it very easy to simply try and raise up the slightest bit and reverse again, and making this a far more accessible position, as well as very relaxing as a bonus. And now we can start having fun bridging around. We're going to tuck our feet as closely to our butts as possible, and we're gonna place our hands below our shoulders like so. And then we're just gonna start by elevating our hips, raising our heels, extending our spine, holding and releasing just a handful of times, getting into the movement. Before we do the same thing for our arms, we're going to raise here first and then carefully, just a tiny bit, and lay back down again. Just the tiniest bit and lay back down again. Develop a little bit of a feeling for the movements, for the strength required, for the flexibility required. And once you feel comfortable raising up, you can start extending, elevating, extending in your arms, pushing through and holding for as long as you can or as long as you dare before you lay back down again. And I would highly recommend between repetitions, pulling your knees in, lengthening your lumbar spine, holding for a handful of seconds, totally relaxed. And of course, you don't just have to hold the bridge statically. What you can also do are classic bridge push-ups. Bridging up, holding for a second, releasing and repeating, building massive amounts of arm, shoulder and posterior chain strength with anterior chain flexibility, an absolutely amazing mobility exercise in general. Now, since those exercises follow a somewhat linear progression when it comes to difficulty, start out with the very first exercise until you're capable enough of doing the second exercise. Now we have 2 exercises. Until you're strong enough to do both of these very comfortably, add the 3rd exercise. Then add the 4th exercise, then add the 5th exercise, and so on and so forth. And once you have accumulated all of them, feel very comfortable, start trying out to raise into a bridge, get a feel for how far you have progressed. And over time, as you do all of these exercises, you'll see how quickly you can advance into the bridge if you can stay consistent. Sadly, that's all the time I've left for you today. However, we'll do stuff like this very frequently, which means I'll probably see you soon. So until then, have a good one. Captain Cairo, peace out.